Hey, everybody. It is Friday night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's our Steelers post-game show, first one of the year. Paul Zeise will be along here shortly to break down the Steelers' 20-12 loss to the Houston Texans in their first preseason game down at Acrisure Stadium. A sluggish start for the offense, didn't score at all in the first half. Justin Fields, obviously, the big headliner, played the first three series, pretty much the whole first quarter, 5 of 6 for 67 yards. Took a couple of sacks, though, had a couple of botched exchanges with Nate Herbig. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discourse about that. Saw a little bit from some receivers, more so late than early. I think Van Jefferson had the one nice 20-yard catch in the first half. But then Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, those guys that were expecting to play some prominent roles for the Steelers, they had not the best night until the second half, really. Calvin Austin dropped a touchdown on a fourth down in the first half, comes back with 2 receptions for 49 yards. Scotty Miller had 3 for 47. Again, most of that production came in the second half. The quality of the Texans defenders that were in the game at that point, probably a lot different than in the first half. So, interesting things there. An interesting night for the offensive lineman. Troy Fautanu made his Steelers debut, made some nice blocks, also missed some. There were different combinations in the game. Again, didn't score in the first half against those Texans special teamers. So Paul's going to be here in a few minutes. So we'll be breaking that down. Before we do, just want to thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Pella Windows and Doors. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul is actually in the lobby, so I'll be adding him in a second when he's all hooked up here. Big night for Payton Wilson as well. 7 tackles, tackle for loss. So I'm sure we'll be getting into him. Let's bring Paul in here. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. I guess let's just start with Justin Fields right off the bat. 5 of 6, as I mentioned in the open here. Completed some balls. I think when he got a chance to throw cleanly, he looked pretty good, but did take those couple sacks and had those botched exchanges with Nate Herbig in the first quarter. What was your assessment of his night overall for the, considering how much hype accompanied it?
Well, I thought he did fine, actually. I mean, I didn't think that he was great, but I didn't think he was bad either. Clearly, first preseason game, all they're trying to do is, get started. You know what I mean? So they're not going to do anything outlandish. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure they didn't have any design runs for him. Obviously, they're not going to get him hurt in a preseason game. The exchanges, there are probably some people that are freaking out about it, but again, that's, first preseason game sloppiness. The only thing that is a little bit concerning is that if you read, on social media, which, I followed on social media and whatnot, the people that have been at camp every day said they hadn't seen that until, this game. So overall, he was fine. I mean, I think, Adam, if we're going to judge him and say, well, did he do anything to win the job tonight? Probably not. But I don't know that he did anything to lose the job either. I mean, I think that basically he did about what I was expecting him to do. One of the things that we saw in training camp, a number of these great plays that he's made, right, were probably sacks. But because it's training camp and they're not allowed to sack him and they're not allowed to tackle him and they're not allowed to touch him, the play goes on a little bit and he made some plays. Tonight he took some sacks. So it's a long way to say he did pretty much what I thought he was going to do.
We didn't see any throws over the middle, which I think has been the big knock from a lot of people on, from his time in Chicago, and has been the big question for people. Can he make those throws? He's going to have to really thrive in the NFL. Are you going to have to see that in a subsequent preseason game, or at some point, maybe in the regular season before you're going to buy that he's got quarterback of the future potential here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all have to see a lot of throws at him that we didn't see tonight. I mean, 4 of his completions were just little dump type. He had 3 of his completions were just sort of little dump off type things. He threw a nice pass to, I think it was Van Jefferson on the sideline. That's a good throw. That's an NFL throw. And he had one other one that was pretty decent. But we have to see him make a lot of throws, obviously, which we will throughout the course of this preseason and throughout the course of time here. There's no question about it.
I want to talk a little bit about the offensive line. I think the issues start with Nate Herbig and those botched exchanges. I think Zach Frazier was noticeable in that we didn't notice him nearly as much as we did Nate Herbig at the beginning of the game. I also thought the offensive line just looked a little off kilter overall. I was sold, a lot more from the guys who've been up at camp, and I just thought they looked, okay. And one thing I've talked about with you, Paul, is, I think it's going to take some time for these guys to gel. I like the long-term potential of this offensive line, but I think we saw tonight that when you go against other teams, and like you said, when there's tackling and real hitting involved, that, maybe they have a little bit further to go than some people had maybe hoped.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and we saw a couple of plays where they just got blown up completely. The one sack, I'm pretty sure it was Fautanu on the right side that just got blown. The guy blew right past him and basically, sacked Justin Fields. It's not necessarily one of these things where you get alarmed, because it's obviously early and it's their first live action. But to your point, for all the people clamoring, to get Dan Moore out of there, I mean, you kind of can see what the Steelers are looking at, which is we're going to bring him along a little slowly. And we're talking about Fautanu because at the end of the day, he's a rookie. And these NFL guys that they're going to go against are going to feast on him if we don't actually bring him along to a point where we feel comfortable that he can handle that kind of a pass rush. I think that's the thing that you really have to look at when you look at tonight. The starting offensive line, Herbig obviously struggled a little bit with some snaps. I thought that the tackles were okay. I didn't think they were spectacular. I thought there was a couple of times where they were able to get some good push to give Najee a couple of runs. But at the end of the day, it's the first preseason game. So, hell, even Joey Porter, if I'm not mistaken, got a pass interference call, and he's in his second year. So it's early. I would say if there's anything that's a little bit concerning, it's that I kind of felt like the Texans were able to take advantage of the Steelers defense a little bit. By the same token, Minka didn't play, TJ Watt didn't play camp. So it's not really the same defense. But for the most part, for a first exhibition game, you know what? They did okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything like, 5-alarm fire here and the offensive line is going to stink. I think it's just more that, I think it's going to take 3, 4, 5 weeks before we see this group kind of get to its full potential for 2024 and then start building for 2025, 2026, because that's what these moves were made for, in my opinion, Paul, was you bring these guys in so that you have them for a long time. They all mature together. You have a very solid unit that's played a lot of football together. And in 2-3 years, I think this line's going to be very good. It's just, this is the first preseason game. There's at one point, there was, I think all 5 guys had been drafted either in 2023 or 2024. So I think some people need to just pump the brakes a little bit. That's all I'm saying, is that, it's a long journey to get where, we believe they're going to go.
Right. But that's, you've got essentially, you've got a second-year guy, and I'm assuming that Zach Frazier is might even be by the way it looked tonight, that it might even be before the start of the regular season. So if he starts, and then Troy Fautanu, if he starts, I mean, you're basically talking about 3 essentially rookies, although Broderick Jones is in his second year. He didn't start all last year, on your offensive line. It's going to take a little bit of time, which I think is good. You've got two, veteran tackles. I'm sorry, you got two veteran guards, in between them all. And those two guys are guys that are going to be leaders of the offensive line and try and, get these guys up to speed and help them with some things maybe they haven't seen yet in their careers and all that other stuff. It's a good mix of some veteran guys and some young guys. But, I don't care who you are, especially at that position, offensive line, and especially at tackles. You know what? It's going to take a little bit of time to really get up to speed to what they do in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that Van Jefferson sighting that we had. There was a nice 20-yard pass from Fields to him in the first half. Then he had that other play that it looked like a catch to me. Mike Tomlin didn't challenge it, but was along the sideline. That looks like a nice play to me, Paul, that he made as well. It just didn't end up counting. Do you have any hope that, you and I every week on our Thursday show talk about, man, the Steelers just got this big collection of guys, right? Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, Des Fitzpatrick, I guess. Do you have any hope, based on some of the buzz that's come out of Latrobe, that maybe Van Jefferson is somewhere in between George Pickens and that group of guys? Maybe he's not going to be a true number 2 by any means, but is he going to be good enough to be a contributor to this team, maybe more of a true number 3 in an ideal circumstance?
I saw a little bit from him tonight that makes me believe that you said it exactly right. He's somewhere between Pickens and the rest of that group. Where, I'm not exactly sure. I do think, though, from everything we've heard from out of camp and from what we saw tonight, I do think he's probably the second best receiver on this team right now. Is he good enough? We have to see a lot more before I'm ready to go there. But it's pretty clear to me that he has probably separated himself from that pack to be that second guy. And so I would say the hope is that he's your third guy from what I've seen so far. But you never know. I mean, again, he made a couple of nice plays tonight. The one, probably, if it was a regular season game, I think they might have challenged it and probably would have won. The one on the sidelines where I'm pretty sure that was him, right? Where he caught it and, they called him out. But if you looked at it in slow-mo, both of his feet got in. They probably challenge that and win. I mean, I think he is obviously your second best receiver. But Adam, that being said, I still think they're one guy short, which is what we've been saying. You and I have been saying it for a year and a half. I still think they're one guy short. I thought they were one guy short last year when they had Deontay Johnson even. And so, I don't think Van Jefferson is as good as Deontay Johnson. So, they need another guy. And nothing I saw tonight convinces me that any of these other guys are that guy.
Yeah, well, let's go to that next. Obviously, you had Calvin Austin drop the touchdown in the end zone. Not a perfect pass from Kyle Allen, but it was catchable, and he didn't make the play. I don't think any of those guys that we expect to be real contributors to this team, other than Van Jefferson, did anything in the first half. Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, they tore up some future car insurance. How much stock are you putting in the efforts of those guys? They didn't do anything to change my opinion of them at all.
That's what I'm saying. The only guy that I saw tonight that I said, okay, that guy might be able to help is Van Jefferson. The rest of that group, they're the group that I thought they were. And Calvin Austin, again, if they were handing out gold jackets for what you do in training camp, he'd already be enshrined. So, but that's not what gets you to where you need to go if you're the Steelers. I just have not seen enough from him in any way, shape, or form to ever think he's a guy that's good enough. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. It's been a long enough time now for this guy. I just don't think that I am.
Paul, this was also the debut of the Arthur Smith offense overall. Obviously, you're going to put more weight in what you saw in the first half, but you got to see 60 minutes of it. There's a lot of hype around him compared to Matt Canada, a sense that he's, more of a polished guy who knows what he's doing, can coordinate. But what did you see in that sense tonight? Obviously, the result's not phenomenal, but did you see the bones of something better than you did last year?
I wanted to scream as loud as I could scream. I think it was the first drive when they had a 3rd and 16 and they dumped it off to Freiermuth for like a 5 or 7 yard play. I said, this is exactly what they did last year. But that's obviously not fair. I mean, obviously, the offensive line issues, the snap issues, those kinds of things, everyone trying to get used to what's going on. I don't know that it's a fair assessment. I did see some things that I like. I think the other part of it is they're not going to show you a whole lot. I mean, they're going to be very vanilla and generic in this preseason because even though everybody has probably, 50, 60, 70 tapes of Arthur Smith offense that they've watched already from Tennessee or Atlanta or whatever, for the most part, I think that they're going to not give you the full idea of what happens or how it goes or how they do it. So, I mean, I think that I saw a little bit. I feel like next week against the Bills, we'll get a much better, idea of what it looks like and the execution and all that stuff, because I think they will have worked out some of their kinks.
Let's switch to the defense. You mentioned kind of got pushed around a little bit at times at the beginning, got pushed around on that 9-minute drive at the end where the Texans just chewed clock. I said, man, this game's going to be over in 5 minutes. Then they finally, get the stop there at the end and get the ball back with a chance to tie it. What'd you think of what you saw from that unit with the guys who were out there? Obviously, there were a lot who were not in there.
Well, was it DeMarvin Leal that kind of moved to the outside a little bit?
He got a sack tonight. Mondrevious Adams got a sack. And
Mondrevious Adams, though, his sack came in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. So who the hell knows who he was playing against in the second half? That's the problem with the exhibition game. Joey Porter Jr., I think, I expect him to have a big year. It's a little disconcerting that he did get that penalty. You wonder if in year 2 now that referees have seen him a lot, is he going to get called for penalties more? Because he is a very handsy, grabby, physical guy. Let's see. Who else did I? There was one. Oh, Herbig showed up a little bit. Made a couple of big plays. For the most part, it's really hard to figure out what's going on in that defense when you don't have the 2 outside guys and Cam Hayward. Because that front 7, and everything they do on defense is predicated from that front 7. What I would tell you, Adam, and I think this is a little bit concerning, is I don't know that they have a lot of depth in their front 7. They have, Payton Wilson obviously is a really good player and shows up and all that. So you got one depth guy there. Man, that front 7, I don't know where to find. Tell me another guy that's depth. That you feel good about that's not a starter, that front 7. I don't know that there is a guy. That's concerning to me. And Marcus Golden was supposed to be one of those guys, and of course they retired him or whatever today. He retired. I mean, Adam, is this going to be a situation where we're one injury away from a disaster again? I mean, clearly, I think you could take an injury to an inside linebacker position because I think Payton Wilson is pretty good, but even then, he's still a rookie. You'd like to be able to play him whenever you want to play him, as opposed to, we got to play him now. But man, I saw a defensive front that got pushed around a little bit, and I'm not sure outside of Herbig. If I saw guys that I really think, wow, these are guys that can really put pressure on the quarterback if it's not one of the big names. So my first impression, and again, I know people get all goofy, oh, you're negative Yinzer media guy, all that crap. My first impression is I think the defense is going to be really good, But I worry about them taking an injury or two to one of the key position or two, because I just didn't see a ton of depth out there.
Yeah. I think the thing is, I mean, at least the secondary wasn't getting like toasted, repeatedly or anything. We've seen worse than what happened tonight. It just did feel like they were getting outmuscled a little bit, and that's somewhat dovetails with what we've heard from Latrobe of, the offense has gotten the better of the defense in a lot of these step drills and all of that. So I think, you take what happened tonight, you pair it with that information, you say they're going to have to be better over this next however many weeks until the regular season starts. They got some work to do. I agree with you, Paul, to kind of get that depth where they need it to be. You mentioned Payton Wilson. He did end up leading the team in tackles tonight with 7. He had a tackle for loss. Do you have any additional thoughts on him and his ability to, be a contributor quickly? Is he the guy who might be contributing, most quickly of this rookie group?
No, I said that. I think when we did our preseason pick, and that what I said, that I thought he was going to be the most impactful rookie. I love the guy, man. I think he is first of all, and I hate using it because it's kind of a cliche, but he's a Steeler, isn't he? I mean, this is a guy that I think Steeler fans are going to love. He clearly loves to play football. He clearly is a little bit nuts, which I think is good. But more importantly, I think he is a guy that really understands football. He's a real high IQ player. He's not just a guy who runs around like a nut and hits people. I think, he's going to be a guy who's going to get better and better and better. I really like him. And watching him tonight, I thought to myself, he might be better than I thought he was going to be. And that's saying something after one exhibition game, because I'm not somebody who usually gets, who goes crazy and is prone to hyperbole. I'm not putting him in the Hall of Fame and all that other stuff. I'm just saying, from what I've seen from him in highlights of some of the training camp stuff, this is the guy who really understands football, who loves to play football. And he's got the necessary skill set, talent-wise, whatever you want to say, to really be a very good football player. So, he's the guy, if you're asking me right now, of all the rookies, nothing I saw today changes my mind when I say I think he will be the highest impact rookie they have.
Paul, we also saw kind of a bad night for Quez Watkins at kick return. We didn't see much in terms of receiver. So the special teams was supposed to be where he was doing some good work. I thought he botched. He called a fair catch when I didn't think he should on the first return. The second return, he botched. It didn't end up losing possession, but just kind of bounced around on him. And then obviously he ends up fumbling and giving up the third return. Not a great start there, Paul, in special teams.
No, and I would be willing to bet that basically next week against the Bills, he'll be playing for his job. Like my guess is they brought him here. They'll give him another opportunity next week against the Bills. But boy, he better not have any mistakes next week because he's not good enough. Nor does he make enough money. Yeah, I mean they can get rid of him with very little pain. I mean he's the kind of guy that right now, and it's one game. I feel like I have to keep saying that because there are idiots out there who, anything you and I say are going to, jump on it and say, oh, well, it's one game. We understand that. You don't have to remind us it's one game. But, I mean, you can't have the kind of mistakes he made very much longer if you want to keep your job, especially if you're a guy like him they brought in, So I have to see probably next week against the Bills, he better have a clean game in terms of catching punts and making good decisions on when to fair catch and when not to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you pair that with he didn't do much, on offense itself, and that, even if it was against third stringers, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller were making plays. He was not. So that's something that you have to bear in mind. The other thing on special teams, did you have any thoughts on the kickoffs? I thought very little. I mean, I've heard a lot about how they're not going to show us anything until the regular season. Very much got that vibe. Very much got the vibe that it's just, it's going to be a nothing burger until we get there.
I still think it's going to be a nothing burger. I mean, you have a 20-yard drop zone. We're going to kick the ball off into the 20-yard drop zone. I'm sure they'll try and get creative, but the bottom line is, I think what's going to happen, Adam, is at some point, one of these guys is going to say, you know what? Let's just kick the ball out of the end zone. Let's take this entire play out. It's only 5 more yards from what it's always been. So, I mean, okay, we give it to them on the 30 instead of the 25. Let's just eliminate this nonsense. I guarantee you someone's going to figure that out. Then some analytics guy is going to look at it and say, well, you know what? Analytically, it's probably a better play to kick it out of the end zone. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. I mean, I think it's a nothing burger.
Or I think, Paul, speaking of the analytics, I think what they might tell you at some point is that you're fighting over like 5 yards. And I think it might be important to the teams on the analytics perspective. But in terms of changing how fans materially, digest the game in terms of entertainment, which is what this move was supposed to be about. And it's very possible that it'll just be a fight for like 5 yards, right?
Yes.
It'll be very boring to watch, but the teams will care about it. But it's not something that's going to get fans very excited. Just a couple more, Paul, here before we wrap up. Kyle Allen had a pretty nice night statistically. Listen, I don't think he's a threat to start. I don't think he's a threat to Justin Fields at the backup job. But, we've talked a lot about third-string quarterbacks in this town for the last couple of years. So I feel like we should at least note the performance he had. 17 for 23, 193 yards, 8.4 yards per attempt, a touchdown, and then that pick at the end in the 2-minute drive. QB rating in 95. Man, that would have been a nice day from the Steelers in the regular season for much of the last few years.
Well, I think that's why you bring a guy like him in, right? I mean, he looked to me like the perfect third-string quarterback tonight. He's a guy who clearly understands the offense. He's played a lot. He's a veteran guy or whatever. He understands NFL offenses. He's capable in a pinch of moving the ball, right? For the most part, I get it in desperation time at the end. He threw a pick, but for the most part, he handled the ball the right way and it doesn't kill you. Yeah, I mean, for your third string guy, that's exactly what you want him to be. And I think he's that good. So I think, to be honest, I kind of feel good about him. Got to get the first 2 spots figured out. You know what I mean? But at least the third spot's figured out.
Speaking of quarterbacks, Paul, I'll get you out of here on this. Did you see that Kenny Pickett had a nice first drive for the Eagles tonight? I'm looking at that box score. He's 14 to 22, 89 yards, 4 yards per attempt. So things slowed down after that first drive. Took a couple steps. Passer rating of 87. But did you care at all about that first Kenny Pickett drive?
No, but I did find it very amusing. That was a big thing on social media. I think the loyal sons, that Twitter feed, that's Pitt Twitter feed. I think they tweeted something like Kenny Pickett 6, the Steelers 0. That was kind of funny, but no, I just can't. I mean, this guy, he's fighting for the second spot, isn't he? Isn't there a kid they drafted in like the 4th round from Stanford that is at least pushing him a little bit?
Yeah, well, but early in the offseason program, there were Eagles reporters saying Kenny Pickett looks better than Jalen Hurts in practice. I think they're controlling the Steeler fans a little bit there.
Yeah, that was silly. But this kid from Stanford apparently has been pretty good in camp and is at least ancillary on some level pushing Kenny Pickett. By the way, before we get out of here, we haven't even mentioned the Brandon Aiyuk saga, which Diana Rossini and one of the other national people basically said, well, the 49ers have now decided that they're going to try and negotiate a long-term deal with him. And so the Steelers haven't had any contact with him for 24 hours. So I'm just going to say it's been an incredible week. And if it ends with Brandon Aiyuk signing an extension with the 49ers, there could be a lot of people in this town disappointed, and also a lot of reporters in this town who are wondering what exactly happened. It's been amusing, though, and I'm just glad I haven't been a part of it other than on the radio every day. I talk about it, and we just sort of talk about the possibilities of it.
Have you ever seen a situation like this in the NFL where it's just like, there's 8 different outcomes and every one of them has been on the verge of happening for the past week?
No, this is the most silly story I can remember in a long, long time. I mean, I'm sick of it too, yeah. But this is also, Adam, like, some coaching searches. I used to cover Pitt football. And Pitt football cornered the market in ridiculous coaching searches. You know what I mean? There were twists and turns every single day for like 2 weeks or whatever until they finally hired their guy. This guy was the leading candidate. This guy was interviewed. Well, maybe he wasn't interviewed. This guy turned down the job, So I just like to say it like this. It's a fluid situation.
Yeah, so stay tuned to the Steelers or to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. We will have much more on whatever happens. We'll also have plenty from Acrisure Stadium tonight. Our guys are in the locker room getting some post-game video interviews with players. We're going to have them talking to us from the field. So if you're not already, if you're just joining us for the first time tonight because you saw we were live after a Steelers game, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. Paul and I will be back next Thursday. We do our Thursday podcast every week. Christopher Carter on the North Shore Drive Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So lots more Steelers content to come. Thanks for staying up with us. Enjoy the Pirate game, Paul.
Oh yes, hey, I can't wait to watch Domingo Herman get out there and throw the ball around a little bit, right?
I know, right? They're making the moves that everyone wants to make.
All right, man. We'll talk to you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.